That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm okay. I think I've whatever malady I have, I've caught from watching City over the last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, it certainly is hanging around, isn't it? It's another disappointing defeat to discuss against Luton Town. But perhaps we will start slightly out of order to our usual running order and talk managerial news first of all. I guess maybe we'll talk the departure of Shota now, then we can talk the game itself and then move on to his potential successor. But it was interesting last week doing the preview episode with Logan and sort of suggesting that the game against Luton could be Shota's last chance. And to be honest, I felt a bit like I was being harsh calling it his last chance, thinking that he'd surely have a bit more time than that. And then the news came through about 8 hours before the game that actually he wasn't even going to get that and that he was on his way out already. So I guess initial reactions to his departure, too harsh, sort of too late in the break, or what did you think of it?
Um, it was interesting. It was very strange. It caught me off guard, but I think I sort of get the sense that it was maybe a Jun with after what was the previous game, Swansea, after the Swansea game.
Swansea, yeah.
Yeah, saying like, well, we've had this discussion. We're going to give him time, and I feel like maybe that was him just saying like, I don't want to rush into anything, and then they've obviously had subsequent discussions about the direction of the team and the direction of the club, and decided that I guess they're at odds in the way that they want to approach that, and I guess thus made the decision. I don't necessarily, because otherwise it doesn't really make any sense to be like, oh, we're going to give him time, and then turn it like then right before the game go, we're sacking him. It feels like there was this, yeah, there had to be subsequent discussions, had to be more discussions about where they were going, what the plan was, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to achieve, and like where their goals were, and it just feels like, especially with the whatever the comment. I mean, it was a sort of standard comment, but that about different visions for the
Different vision,
club or
yeah.
something like that they had a difference of opinion on like what their expectations, where they could be, where they should be, etc.
Ajun wanted to win games and Shota wasn't able to provide that. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a weird one. And I did see the suggestion that because obviously Ajun had that motorbike accident where he injured his arm, that potentially that delayed a decision. But I'm like, he's not the only one at the club who can hire and fire. So you would think if he'd given Kessler the go ahead to make the decision, it doesn't require him to be, present or not in a hospital sort of thing. It was just for me, it was the 8 hours before the game. I think if you've made the decision that late in the piece, just give him the game. Even you see quite often actually managers say to players or say straight after the game that they've left the job or that they've been sacked or anything like that. I can only imagine he thought there was the outside chance that we'd be galvanized into getting a result, which unfortunately didn't come. But I guess on the flip side, Andy Dawson coming into the role and presumably, unless we have a similarly late announcement of a new manager, Dawson will be in charge for Wigan tomorrow morning. Pretty. I like having that sort of connection to the club's past in the interim sort of managerial seat. I think I was saying to someone the other day, it sort of softens the blow of these sorts of losses. I think when you've got a manager that you have that connection to, where you can sort of be a bit more sympathetic towards. I think, and it's nice having that connection through to the 2008 Premier League side all the way through to he was playing under Steve Bruce in our second promotion season. So it's that sort of connection to the past.
Yeah, I think it it is valuable having that local connection. I think also like just someone who has been there and done that with City as well. The experiences he has, his passion for the club is something that hopefully he can use to inspire the troops for tomorrow morning's or tomorrow's match. Um, but I thought he spoke like really clear, really confidently, really positively after the Luton game, considering he'd been in charge for 8 hours or
Yeah.
10 hours basically at that time. So um, it's interesting, like because I was even just thinking about earlier today with what I wanted to say about Dawson and his post match and how he'd handled himself so far. And I thought, lots of confidence. I thought, that's really strange because, like, I guess, like, maybe it was a language thing for Shota partly, but I mean, I just get the sense, like, with strikers generally, that they're normally not short of confidence. So it was very surprising that he couldn't really ever, like, clearly explain, like, the processes or what he wanted or anything in his post matches and his presses. But I think Dawson, he seems to have just simplified the game plan and the game plan is work hard and try to make some luck for ourselves. And I think, like, it seemed to work. He seemed to get that through to a few players who we have so far this season questioned whether they have the drive and the graft and the grit in them. I thought, like, Tufan, I thought, put in actually quite a good shift, playing in an unfamiliar position to finish off. But some players that we've questioned, I thought, really seemed to work really hard throughout the game, even if we still didn't create anything in the final third. But I thought that work rate and that dedication to the cause seemed to be evident anyway.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue. We can talk more broadly about the game now. We've got Cameron, who's joined us in the chat, just as a shout out to him. I mean, just as a final point, I guess, on Shota's games, haven't been super stoked watching any games in the last month or so. It seems as if we've completely fallen apart. Under Shota, we seemed all right, and then it just fell away. And I think that's certainly, as you alluded to at the start of the episode, with the malaise around the club over the last 4, 5, maybe 6 games. And it certainly continued against Luton last weekend or last Saturday morning. I think, as you said, we definitely looked better. We looked more organised. We held the ball better. And really, you can consider both of those goals quite unfortunate. The first one, just the way it bounces in on the rebound off Jones. And the second, I mean, I don't even think you could say debatably offside. I think he was definitely offside in the build-up before it came back to the name's gone out of my head, former Arsenal. Lansbury scored the second goal. And you consider, I think it was between the two goals that Slater had that great chance, which very nearly kind of mimicked the first goal and could have gone in as well. So in a way, arguably, I mean, it was just a bit of bad luck, but at the same time, no other shots on target. So you could say that we didn't really deserve much either.
Yeah, it was one of those where I think that Slater goal, or not goal, so that Slater attempt, that hitting the crossbar, that really could have been the turning point. I think if that had gone in, because we are, 5 losses in a row now, a team very short on confidence, and I think that might have been sort of the boost that we needed at that sort of point to get back in into the game at least. We never really seemed to make any real dangerous inroads. I mean, Elder and Coyle got lots of balls into the box, but nothing of any real substance that allowed us to actually do much with it. And I think that's one of the issues as well. We're just focusing on getting crosses into the box instead of focusing, I think, maybe on creating quality, like, getting a quality cross or creating quality chances or something.
I think we've seen Estupinion's goals early in the season and thought, right, we've just got to just get the ball in there and he's going to score all these goals. And I don't think it's quite worked out.
But yeah, it was a day. I think that was a moment that could have changed the game had it gone in our favor. But I think that was something where, like Dawson alluded to in his post match, was to say that, like, you make your own luck, and we didn't do enough to, like, overall offensively to create anything and to force any of those sorts of things. Even with that, I know it was a long drive, but had Longman or Estepinian or someone been, putting that pressure on, maybe they're there to force to get the tap in or get something like.
Yeah. And I think for me as well, almost the most frustrating element is that, similar to last week in comments to Logan, the changes to the lineup were the sorts of changes that we were after. We saw Figueiredo drop out for Jones. We saw, maybe not Longman necessarily coming in, but We saw Seri drop out of the midfield where he's perhaps being a bit lax in the last couple of weeks. So we're seeing the right changes to the side. And I guess the worrying thing is that none of these things are really making that much of a difference. I thought, and I think you'd said previously as well, that the Doherty substitution, I thought Doherty looked really good when he came on. Didn't think a whole lot of Cynic, but understandably quite rusty, getting his first minutes of the season. I thought Christie actually looked pretty decent coming on. He had a better left foot than I expected from him with that sort of curling chance that he had. So there are the players there. And in a way, I mean, I'm almost thinking you kind of end up falling back on the players that we used a lot last season, who we can rely on a little bit more in your Dohertys, in your Jones, perhaps, more so than the new players, which I think I said after the game. For the majority of that game, we had 7 of the 11 players as players that we had from last season. So for all of the signings over the summer, it doesn't feel as if it's worked out quite the way we would have envisaged.
Yeah, I think I think Doherty certainly was the standout of the subs, but I think Christie did have a really good appearance, in an unfamiliar or set quasi unfamiliar role, not really as a traditional right back when he came on. So I think they were good, as you say, with Cynic sort of so long out, injured. First sort of start, tried to do some stuff, but again, one of those never played with these guys with us before, so I think he'll get better. Still somehow managed to look more dangerous than Longman, so
yeah, I feel like we've kind of passed the point of giving him the excuse of early season injury, or I don't know what's going on with him, but it's gonna be interesting to see in that sense. But yeah, look, it was a game. It happened, but we can move on. We'll do our MVP votes before we move on to discussing potential new managers. I like the last couple of games, I've really struggled to give much in the way of votes because there's just not been a whole lot of action to comment on or sort of award votes for. I went Coyle for the 3 votes. I think, like you were alluding to before, a lot of balls into the box, getting up the field. I thought it was one of his more dangerous games. I thought he looked quite good and commendably led from the front. I thought Slater, 2 votes. I mean, it's really scraping the barrel because I think he's certainly dipped in form a lot from his early season form. So I don't think he's quite at that level that he was at the start of the season. But by virtue of having probably our best chance of the game, I've been inclined to give him a couple of votes. And then Baxter for the 1 vote, I think he did about as well as could be expected of him and really rallied the defense from the back.
Yeah. I have gone... and then it's similar to your 2 votes. I've given Slater 3, and basically, like, it was best of a bad bunch. I considered Coyle and Elder. I thought they were, at times, I thought Elder had a really good first half, but I thought he dipped off a lot in the second. I thought Coyle was really dangerous in the second, but not quite as effective in the first. And thought Slater was busy throughout, had the chance. So I gave Slater the 3. And I gave 2 to Doherty because I thought those couple of substitutions changed the way we were approaching the game when they came on. So we seemed much more aggressive or forward oriented, like moving the ball forward. And he just came on, and it was like a League One Doherty. Really, he was sort of almost back to the Doherty we used to love. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does get a start against Wigan with the performance that he came on, with thinking about how Dawson's going to approach this, and he wants players who are going to work hard and and do that, and to come on and use that as your sort of audition for the new manager or whatever was pretty solid. And I gave 1 point to Christie for... Again, I thought he was solid when he came on. The one of what could have been our only shot on target. So I thought he was good and involved in lots in that right hand channel with Coyle and others.
Yeah, good shout. Good shout. Well, Cameron had another quote or message in the chat to say, hopefully the new manager can come in and maintain that early season sort of positivity that we did have under Shota and sort of resurge up the table. Anyone that we want in particular? Well, we do have a lot of names that have been linked in the past few days. I think Baz put out an article in the Hull Daily Mail, kind of going through all of the candidates that have emerged and then disappeared again. Um, as recently as yesterday when I was writing up this run sheet, I thought that Carlos Carvajal was as good as a done deal. So he was sort of the one that I was focusing on. And then it all seems to have changed a little bit in the last 24, 36 hours. Because he'd left he was at a club in the UAE where he departed after a 4-0 win. It seemed as if that meant that he was pretty much on his way to Hull. Sounds as if now either we've turned him down or he's turned us down. There's other jobs that are available as well. Wolves have sacked their manager as well. They love a Portuguese manager. So I'm sure there's a couple of options out there for managers. Carlos Corberán, who in preseason left Huddersfield in the Championship after taking them to the playoff final, went to Olympiacos for a couple of, I want to say months, but maybe only weeks before being sacked there by the Nottingham Forest owner. So he has a penchant for sacking managers. Seems a pretty reasonable option, but he's also being looked at by Middlesbrough. Scott Parker, who was sacked by Bournemouth earlier in the season, has won promotion from the Championship with both Fulham and Bournemouth. Doesn't have a great style of play, seemed to sort of fall out with the Bournemouth supporters at the end of last season, and then the Bournemouth owners at the start of this season. Sergeant Yelkin, if that is how it's pronounced, most recently managed Beşiktaş in 2021, winning the title with them. Seemed to be the early front runner just because of obviously the Turkish links and probably Acun having some sort of working relationship with him already. But then the most recent name to emerge, and the one that is now starting to sound the most likely, is Pedro Martins, who I think he's also Portuguese, former Olympiacos manager as well, just like Corberán. But most recently, I think was managing in Portugal, if I'm not wrong. I think he was most recently at Olympiacos, but he was previously in Portugal managing Rio Ave, which was a club Carvajal previously managed as well, and also Vitória Guimarães, which is where he would have managed Oscar Estepinian. I think I've had it pointed out by Mitch that means that he was probably the one that sent him out on loan. So I don't know if that means he rates him particularly highly or if that was just early in his career. But he's got a really good pedigree. Like he's taken clubs in Portugal into the top 4, into cup finals, into Europe, that sort of thing. So, there's that sort of hesitancy, I think, after both Slutsky and Shota to say we don't necessarily want a foreign manager. We want someone who knows the English leagues. But then you look at, Marco Silva obviously didn't have any English experience, but had that experience in a higher pedigree European league in Portugal, which I guess Martins has as well. So you could make the case that that's actually still quite an impressive get if we were to get him. Taking teams to the Europa League is a pretty decent achievement and experience. But I guess that's sort of the long list of names that have been linked, the experience that they've all got. What's your sort of take and the sort of manager you'd want to see appointed?
Can we get one who's going to be successful? We could sit here probably all night and talk about the pros and cons of each of those, or the perceived pros and cons of each of those managers and their impacts on the players and the style of play and the fans and everything else in between. But and not to be dismissive of this discussion, but it's sort of out of our hands completely. And whoever Acun decides is obviously who we're going to get, but I just hope that it's someone who, I guess, like at least understands or takes the time to get some sort of an understanding of the club, and is one that's going to like dictate their style of play around the players that we have, not sort of, square pegs into round holes and force the players into a system that doesn't necessarily work. I hope we sort of take a bit more of a pragmatic approach, because at the moment we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're very low on confidence, and I think we just need to start scraping some nil-alls or some 1-1s or something, get some points, start picking up some points again, and just turn some draws into some wins before we start worrying about trying to play beautiful attacking football. It's sort of a little bit. We sort of need to be a little bit boring to watch for a little while, just to get some confidence and some runs on the board, I think.
So with this managerial appointment, then I guess stripping out the who necessarily, but as you say, the style that they need to bring to the team, or the sort of the recovery that they need to implement on the side to get us just back performing. It feels like there is a lot riding on this appointment, because it all started off quite well under Shota. It's all sort of unraveled a little bit. If this appointment was to also not work out, hypothetically, we end up in a relegation battle with a manager perhaps not prepared for it. A lot could go wrong quite quickly if this managerial appointment doesn't work out. Is it therefore a matter of actually, yes, we do just want, as you say, a manager who's going to build sort of defense first, grind out those points and get those wins, which I guess the worry is that doesn't sound like what Ojun's after. He wants someone who, I think the quote was, lose 3-2 instead of draw 0-0. Although we should be pointed out to Ojun that you do actually get a point for a draw. You don't get a point for a 3-2 loss.
Yeah, look, I think it as great as it is to be passionate about football and to want to play own a team and have them play attractive attacking football. What's the old goals win games, defense wins championships.
Yeah,
that old sort of chestnut. So I think really we haven't been as I think we're the worst defense in the league. So
yeah.
I think that's obviously sure we're not scoring many goals, but I think really we need to stop leaking them. At least that way we can give ourselves a chance of at least getting a point. Because at the moment we don't look like scoring any. We're pretty confident every game we go into that we're going to concede something. It doesn't make a good recipe for getting points and moving away from the bottom three.
Well, I guess hopefully we'll have that manager in before too long. I think giving them a decent chance to bed in. I think the benefit with the
planning. I think they've been saying Jun's been saying he's trying to get it in before Huddersfield. I think is his goal before the weekend.
Yeah, because then even looking a bit further ahead, we do have the World Cup break to give almost like a mini pre-season to that manager. So it is a unique season in that sense that we almost get that second chance at implementing a style and sort of really kickstarting the season that we wouldn't otherwise have. Well, we'll move on. Then we'll talk about those games in 1 second. We'll do our Who Am I game first of all. Give you a chance to get another one correct if you're good to go.
Sure.
All right.
A bit of brain fog, but we'll see how we go.
So there you go. So first clue, I made 191 league appearances for City, scoring 7 goals. That's a lot of appearances.
191. At first, I was like, when I saw the big numbers and the low goals, and I was like, oh, maybe like a defender or something. I was like, oh, he's probably trying to stitch me up because Dawson's just taken charge. He played way more than 191. He's like 300 games.
Yeah.
191. That's a fair few. I'm thinking like someone like El Mohammadi or something.
Do you want to go that as a guess?
Sure.
First time we've had a guess correct after the first clue. Well done. It is El Mohammadi.
Fair enough.
Well done. Yeah, joined in 2012 on loan before signing permanently in 2013. Left in 2017. Wore the number 27. Played right wing back. I'm El Mohammadi. Yeah. Well done. Yeah. I do because it's almost a challenge to myself of can I find a player that you could actually get it off the first clue. So yeah, that's a good one. Well done. Short and sweet. Very nice. Cool. Okay, well, we'll move on to discuss the 2 games coming up. But before we do, if you are enjoying the episode and you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, Please do subscribe, hit like on the video as well. The more views and the more likes do get the video around to more people. So that's always appreciated. Cool. Okay. So we've got Wigan tomorrow morning, managed by Liam Richardson. He took over in 2020 after a couple of previous managers departed when they fell into administration. So he's been there for quite a while now. He's built them up out of League One back into the Championship. We last played them in League One where we beat them 5-0 and 3-1 as just revenge for that 8-0 defeat in the Championship last time we played them in this division. But they've got the best away record in the league, which I found a bit surprising to hear the other morning. So they are a very dangerous side to come up against, especially in the form that we're in. So they've got Keane up top. They've also got obviously Josh Magennis as well. So we'll see a few reunions at the MKM. It'll be an interesting game. I think it's interesting because they haven't won a game at home. So it's not as if they're in sort of imperious form or this sort of dominant force, but clearly with that away record, they're doing something right. We sort of talked about the sort of the improvement that we've seen under Dawson against Luton. We'll probably see a few more changes to the lineup, perhaps Doherty coming in. A reasonable chance to pick up something in this game. I would kind of say this with every game, but looking at this fixture and then the Huddersfield fixture as well, they're both as good a chance to get something.
Yeah, look, I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what sort of imprint, now that Dawson's had a few sessions, running them specifically and more opportunity to talk to them individually and collectively, sort of what he can imprint on them for this game, and what choices he makes now that he's watched them in the game, watched them in training this week. So what sort of a squad he selects to be interesting to see how that all plays out. Because I think apart from, did he have a little go as manager somewhere else?
Yeah, I think he was Scunthorpe.
Yeah,
I think that's the one that, yeah.
But not much managerial experience. So be sort of just, yeah, I don't know. I think based on his like career and how he was as a player and what he said that he wants from players, I dare say that it'll be probably fairly similar to how we started on the weekend, with maybe like Doherty, who we know is going to work hard, coming in probably in place of Woods. And I'm not sure if like Cynic was fit enough to do more, but I can't see. I still don't think he would start. I think again he's still going to probably be a second half sub. He got 20 minutes, maybe he gets half an hour or something. And I guess the other difference might be that Estepena might be able to play the full 90 if required, because I think he'd just flown back from overseas like the day before or the morning of or something crazy. So
yeah, and I feel like at 2-0 down, they will probably just well, let's give him the rest and get him ready for the Thursday game. But yeah, I think you're right. Those are probably the main changes for the game. I don't know if he'd really try to do anything too radical other than that. I was thinking whether Tufan drops out for Doherty to give us a bit more mobility in midfield, but then there's always that balance. And I guess this is sort of one of Shota's undoings as well, as with those new signings on big wages. You've also got to deal with egos, and you don't want to be going and dropping players or resting players in games where the impact of doing that can actually sort of have a much worse impact in the background. But at the same time, you can't play players who aren't necessarily contributing either. So that'll be sort of an interesting balance. But yeah, look, I think I probably agree with the changes that you're saying there. But in terms of the match itself, do you sort of have any confidence of a draw, perhaps?
I think
not even a win.
in the our Facebook group tipping, I think I've gone for a 1-1. I still feel like there's some goal, like we haven't solidified our backline, our defense up enough. I still don't feel confident in it, and I feel we will concede. But I do feel like, as you sort of say, the 2 goals that we conceded against Luton were, unlucky in a sense to concede them. So um, I feel like there's some level of improvement there, because some of the previous few games that we've lost before Luton, it wasn't luck, it was just terrible defending. So
Yeah.
there's at least,
Funny how that changes when Figueiredo gets dropped.
the somehow that's the silver lining, that we're conceding to bad luck and not
Yeah.
like bad decisions. But I think there's an there's some sort of some tiny sliver of improvement in their defensive stability there. But I think we'll concede. But I feel like that we have enough players within the squad, within the first 11, or within our predicted first 11, that can do something. I think we like Tufan. I know he's the luxury player or whatever, but he is sort of one who, given the right moment, can
Yeah.
create. We saw with the 2 goals. He's had a couple of volleys that he's hit the post, he's hit the crossbar this season. He's one who can create sort of an opportunity or a goal out of nothing. So if he's on the night, then he could very well be someone to create something for us. And I think, like, as Slater sort of showed, we just need to start taking some shots, taking some chances,
Yeah.
because, like, sure, there wasn't much going on, so he just went, bugger it, I'll have a dig.
And it almost came off. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think there's an element of, maybe it was through the Shota's tactics or whatever, where we were trying to create the perfect goal too much or whatever. But like, there's lots of opportunities we've had over the last month or so where players probably should have just said, bugger it, I'll take a shot, and they haven't. But I think even, I think Longman just cut inside a player and tried to have a shot, and Christie's had a shot from distance, and Slater's had a shot from distance. And so I think, you're not going to score if you don't shoot. So I think just some players who are willing I think they all just need to be a bit more ruthless. Just let fly when you're in and around the box. See what happens.
Yeah.
The other teams do it to us, and they score goals. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the prediction league, I've gone a 2-0 Wigan win, but that's more from the logic of I'd be quite happy to be wrong, but otherwise I'll just take the points and continue on. So I was very close to going 1-1 as well, because I do think 1-1 seems to me a score I could see coming out of this game. I think we've got a goal in us. We've been going for a while now without one, so I think it will come. So hopefully we can pick up a draw in that one. We've got Huddersfield on the weekend as well, managed by Mark Fotheringham, who's taken over following Danny Schofield's sacking. I was hearing a bit of talk about him being sort of this meld of all these different philosophies, and sort of thinking it sounds a bit strange. And, of course, he's going to be talking himself up as this sort of modern maestro of a coach. But then they did have a 3-3 draw this morning, which was a little bit unexpected. So maybe they do have a few goals in them, and they are a bit more dangerous than we might have given them credit for. They've won their last 4 games against us, which has sort of completely passed me by. I didn't think our record was quite that bad against them. But they've lost 4 of their last 5 during this morning's game. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to add to the discussion on this one that we haven't really said about the Wigan game. But I guess with the form that they're in, there's that opportunity there that of the 2 games, I suspect this one's probably the more winnable game. But at the same time, if they're going to have an upturn of form under their new manager, look, and maybe we'll have our manager in place by then as well, which could be quite fascinating. But yeah, I guess do you see any different sort of sense of a victory in this one?
not really. I sort of feel like, I know, like, Ajun had said he wants to appoint the manager before the Huddersfield game, but surely, like, even if he appoints him, he's not going to, like, take charge until after that anyway. I wouldn't think. Like, it wouldn't make a lot of sense so you'd think that Dawson's going to have him for these 2 games at least.
Keeping in mind that this game, actually, I just think about it, this is on the Sunday night, not the Saturday night. So it's the 10 p.m. game on the Sunday. So he does have that extra day. So if he was appointed on, say, Friday,
Yeah,
it does
true.
give him 48 hours.
I suppose it just feels like, I guess they do it all the time. It's just like not a lot of time to.
Yeah.
Like you'd want to. I would, if I was coming in, I'd want a full week to.
Yeah. Well, Dawson got 8 hours.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, right. Beggars can't be choosers, can they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I don't know. It's so hard with how crazy everything is at the moment. It's so hard to even look forward like the few days.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
I'm struggling. I don't even know what's going to happen between now and the game, and when I wake up at 5:30 tomorrow to watch us play Wigan.
Yeah.
Anything could happen overnight. So yeah, I don't really know. I'm not feeling real confident about nabbing a win in either of these. I could, maybe see us nabbing a point or two, but I don't.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd probably set the line at 2 points. Anything more than 2 points, I'd be really happy with. That means getting a win in either game. Anything less than 2 points, we're getting a draw and a loss. I'd probably be disappointed. I'd probably feel like there's neither of these games screams loss to me. I'd love 2 draws, but 2 losses would probably be disaster. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, look, as you say, I mean, it's difficult to even predict 24 hours from now. As Ajun's sort of shown with the Shota sacking, anything can happen at short notice. So we could wake up tomorrow morning and the manager's already been announced. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you're sort of thinking perhaps a draw for this one, but maybe more of a chance for a win than the Wigan game?
Probably. I guess only in the sense that if Huddersfield's got a new manager as well, and they've less drilled in his philosophies, then that. I mean, does it make any difference? Because we've got a new manager and we're in between getting other one. So
I know it's a weird.
Who knows?
Anyway.
Can I just flip 2 coins, and then I'll tell you what I reckon.
Sure. Well, I was trying to think because obviously, so we had Slutsky go and we got Adkins, and I think Adkins was in before the next game, which was Bristol City, and we won that one. Then Adkins went in the summer when we got McCann. Then McCann went, but we already all knew that Shota was lined up, and he came in quite quickly as well. This is the first time I can remember in a while where we've had probably the only time. Well, I guess Phelan going and getting silver, but I think even that was reasonably quick. This is the first time in a while I can think where we've had a caretaker in and genuinely not really had a sense of who our next manager will be. So
which is, I mean, it's nice. I mean, at least it means, like in a sense, it's nice. It's nail biting. My fingernails don't love the situation at the moment, but at least it shows that Ajun's he's obviously got some power and some pull, and that he can at least attract or get into the conversations, into discussions with some of these managers, because I think like no offense to McCann, because he's not a terrible manager. He's a young manager who struggled on a shoestring budget while he was with us, that had the Allams still been in charge and they decided to sack McCann for whatever reason, who would we have got? Probably another, McCann-esque, someone who was going to be cheap to pay, who was basically going to do what he was told, yada, yada, yada. So I think like to have some, more experienced, higher caliber names on the list is a positive.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it'll be a very interesting time. I mean, the transfer window shut, so this is clearly Ajun's new form of entertainment is hunting the market for a new manager. So it'll be certainly interesting to see who we settle on in the coming days. And then, of course, the Wigan game tomorrow morning before Huddersfield this weekend. But we'll be back next week to cover all the latest news on managerial appointments and results of those 2 games. But until then, thanks for joining me, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
And thank you everyone for listening in. Until next time, come on, City.